Hello, everyone. I'm Eric Bolling, along with Eboni K. Williams and Katherine Timpf. We are the Fox News specialists. The world feeling somewhat more dangerous now after North Korea's successful test of an intercontinental ballistic missile, one that they say can now reach America. Alaska so far, as they work towards California, then on to Chicago, and finally New York. The UN Security Council holding an emergency session this afternoon to address the crisis, with Nikki Haley, the U.S. ambassador to the UN, speaking out fairly aggressively. Listen.
Make no mistake, North Korea's launch of an ICBM is a clear and sharp military escalation. Yesterday's ICBM escalation requires an escalated diplomatic and economic response. Time is short. Action is required. The world is on notice. If we act together, we can still prevent a catastrophe, and we can rid the world of a grave threat. If we fail to act in a serious way, there will be a different response.
The Pentagon says the missile is new and never seen before, marking a major step forward for the North. And Fox News' Jennifer Griffin is reporting that U.S. officials had advance warning of the test, with satellites capturing the fueling of the rocket prior to launch. Before leaving for his European trip this morning, President Trump took a swing at China and its failure to help contain the rogue state, tweeting, quote, "Trade between China and North Korea grew almost 40% in the first quarter. So much for China working with us, but we had to give it a try." Eboni, and Kat, big news day today. There are a couple of ways to deal with North Korea. I think you have diplomacy, which we've tried for the better part of 5 decades and maybe 7 or 8 presidents. Bilateral negotiations, meaning try and work with these people, but he doesn't seem like Kim Jong-un wants to work with us. Further sanctions, honestly, I've been hearing this for years. But the one that we touched about, maybe the only solution, barring some sort of military strike, would be this massive cyber war, maybe a covert cyber war on the North Koreans.
Yeah, I mean, Eric, I don't personally believe diplomacy is ever going to work with someone like Kim Jong-un. I think that we know that. I think short of military strategies, we've got to get much more aggressive. I mean, I can appreciate Ambassador Haley saying about this and that it's an escalation. Guess what? It's been an escalation for a long time now. My worry is that maybe we're looking too little too late.
What do you think, Kat? Do we try it in that order? You know, diplomacy and then bilateral negotiations and then maybe some sort of sanctions. None of these seem to have worked. What's the next step?
Right. And what I don't understand is when you talk about it in terms of China not wanting to help us, if this goes badly for us, then it's bad for China too. They should want to help themselves at this point. If things get ramped up, we might see a nuclear South Korea, a nuclear Japan. China doesn't want that. So do it for themselves.
Think about this, though. Remember 1950 when the North Koreans attacked the South Koreans? China helped out. China helped the North Koreans, and maybe even Russia helped a little bit as well.
And I'm ready for them to get called out, Eric, for exactly, to me, what they're doing. It's aiding and abetting option for nuclear in North Korea.
All right, let's meet today's specialist. She's a former political host for HuffPost Live, the former host of the Alyona show on RT, and a political writer for the Daily Banter, but she specializes in trying to bring post-partisanship to the news. Good luck with that. Minkovski is here, and he's the author of GOP GPS, How to Find the Millennials and Urban Voters the Republican Party Needs to Survive, and he's a former communications staffer for Florida Senator Bill Nelson and Rudy Giuliani's 2008 presidential campaign, and he specializes in strategic communications. Siegfried is here. Evan, we'll start with you. You published an article about this exact topic today. I read your article. You know, I'm going to call you out a little bit on this, my friend. You're brilliant. You're very smart. But again, you're focusing on more sanctions. We haven't had China's ability to get China to the sanction table for 60 years.
Well, it's a question of who we're sanctioning. Obama, Bush, and Clinton all tried sanctioning North Korea, and that didn't work. We need to sanction the people who enable North Korea, Chinese banks, Chinese companies, other foreign entities that give economic lifeblood to this killer regime. And when you do that, you're going to start to strangle them economically. At the same time, we need to call on places like South Korea and China to stop giving aid, which undercuts sanctions. Between 1991 and 2015, South Korea gave North Korea $7 billion in aid, which allowed the North Koreans to stay in power. If you do that and you strangle North Korea economically, you'll actually see most likely a coup, which will see Kim Jong-un be forced out and a more pro-Western.
But that would require China to play ball.
If you sanction Chinese banks and say there's no business dealings with the United States and the West, you bet China's going to play ball because they won't have any money.
You're a Russia expert, I would say. Would that be fair to say? You're born there?
Sure. I'm Russian, you know. I speak the
So
language.
would Russia fill the gap, the void, that if China were to back out or start applying sanctions, maybe Russia steps in? They're not afraid to trade with North Koreans.
Well, I think that, for starters, sanctions just don't have a good track record, right? They're not working currently against Russia. They haven't been working against North Korea. They haven't been working against Iran. And so they're not really a viable solution. And while China and Russia might not necessarily want to play ball, the United States also needs them. North Korea is not an issue the United States can go at alone. I think that we all can agree that we want to try to avoid any type of military conflict or military escalation on the part of the United States. And so if you actually give these countries something to work with, right, rather than trying to slap them on the wrist and sanction them, that might lead to some type of positive development. What does that look like,
Alyona, if I can ask? What, they're giving them something to work with outside of sanctions?
I think just having a dialogue. You know, the thing about Russia, for example, that I feel so many people fail to understand is that Russians will cut off their nose to spite their face, right? They are a very stubborn country, and so the more that you try to clamp down, the more that they are chided by the international community, the more resistant and stubborn they will be. And so I think that if you make China and Russia feel like they're partners who are needed on the part of the United States, then maybe they'll come to the table.
Is there any getting China to the table, honestly, if we haven't been able to do it? I went back. Harry Truman, Eisenhower, Kennedy, Nixon, Ford, Carter, Reagan, Bush, Clinton, Bush again, other Bush, Obama. Does Trump have to try something other than bringing China to the table?
Well, I think that if China knows what's best for China, not for us, for China, the worse things get for us, the more likely they would be to want to get involved. Having there be instability there, having North Korea be a problem for us, that China likes that. They don't want a war. That would be the worst for them. They'd have a refugee issue. You could have nuclear programs in Japan and South Korea. It's just a Chinese nightmare. So I don't know why they're not looking at this and being more concerned about it. I don't understand.
Big trading partner.
Sure, but that all goes away if we have to have World War III right there.
Well, I'm not sure it goes to World War III.
And I was going to say, and I don't think anybody believes it's going to get there, Eric. I think that's the problem, is that people have seen president. You gave a beautiful laundry list of presidents who have really not been, completely failed, been completely inefficient. I agree with Alyona. I think sanctions make us feel good. That's the problem I had with the Iran deal. There's no way to really enforce them. Therefore, they become completely ineffective. And I will tell you, Eric, I believe President Trump talked very tough on China as a candidate. I think it's time for the tough to follow through.
Allow me to bring our two specialists in. Is there any, I'll start with you, Alyona. Do you doubt Kim Jong-un's desire and willingness to actually put a warhead, nuclear warhead, on a ballistic missile and send it our way?
I don't think Kim Jong-un is a rational actor. So you have to keep that in mind when thinking about what his intentions may or may not be. I also think that he's someone who cares about his own survival. Politically and, you know,
tangibly.
and tangibly too. So I do think that this is, you know, a political actor who very much also wants to be recognized on the world stage, wants to feel like he has some type of importance, and that's why they make these type of gestures that threaten and risk other people.
Do you allow that to happen? If you just say he's unstable and you wouldn't put it past him to actually firing off a missile that could reach the United States?
No, but I don't think that you allow for it to happen, but I also don't think that you overreact and say it's time to bomb.
Let's be clear
the
here,
truth
though.
is that nothing has changed, right?
Kim
The populations of South Korea and
his...
Japan are still in the same danger that they were before this intervention.
Kim Jong-un is staking his entire legitimacy of his regime on making this nuclear program. For him to disarm at this point, it would take massive amounts of incentive. And what does North Korea do?
And he said today, Evan, by the way, that's off the table.
Right,
no negotiation.
Of course
not.
The only way they'll negotiation if it's one-on-one, because that gives them further legitimacy. When Dennis Rodman went there 2-3 weeks ago, they loved it. It was a victory for the North Koreans because they see this American who rationalizes them putting their own people in prison.
So, Evan, that's hindsight. Now let's be foresight. Let's go look forward. So then what? He's irrational. We wouldn't put it past him, Kim Jong-un, to do something stupid. Sanctions haven't worked. Now what?
I think that we have to get Russia and China on the table and on the same page. Their initial reaction yesterday was, well, we could propose a deal where the U.S. takes out the THAAD missile systems from South Korea in exchange for North Korea disarming. North Korea, A, never abides by any agreements, and B, the THAAD missile systems, they're not saying that because North Korea wants it out. It's because Russia and China view that as a threat to their own influence on the region.
Take a listen to Lieutenant Colonel Oliver North. He had some provocative analysis on Fox earlier this afternoon about what he says led us to this point with North Korea.
We're paying the price for 8 years of Obama's flaccid response to real existential threats from both Pyongyang and Tehran. Look, the Obama administration's non-proliferation policy, which they put at the top of the list of things they wanted to do, it was simply a matter of unilateral disarmament. If we disarm, everyone else will. It was fatally flawed, pacifist hogwash.
Okay, let me bring Ken. You know my problem? Oliver North, war hero, I get it, but he just blamed this all on Obama.
Yeah.
This goes back, I named 8 presidents, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 presidents that we can hang this on.
Yeah, certainly don't think that we can pin this on Obama. Absolutely not. What you're seeing in North Korea is just a bizarre situation. Okay, Kim Jong-un is not just a leader, he's a God king over there, right? I mean, Kim Jong-il's official biography says that he had a divine birth and he never had to use a bathroom. And they control the media, and all the people there believe this kind of garbage. This is what creates someone that's this crazy. If people all thought I was a god, I don't know what that would do to my head. Probably not good things. So no, to blame this on any leader, that's a little ridiculous.
Let me throw something at you, Eboni.
Yes, sir.
We spent the better part of $1 trillion on the Afghan and Iraq wars, conflicts, wars, whatever you want to call them. We lost, I don't know, several thousands of Americans.
Their lives, yeah.
What if we just, this cyber war I suggested, what if we spend, I don't know, $200-300 billion paying off people who know cyber, who can get in and start working their way infiltrating the North Korean systems, nuclear and such. Bring them down that way.
Yeah, I see Evan over here shaking his head, so we'll get to that in a second. I'm not mad at that, Eric, because to me, the options are getting more and more limited with each passing year, right? So what we know is their program is ramping up. We know, as Alyona points out, the territories of civilians is the same. And actually, it's getting bigger because now they're getting closer and closer here to the U.S., Alaska now, maybe L.A. soon. I'm open and willing to any and everything because containment doesn't work. These sanctions haven't worked, and by golly, if it's cyber, then let's do that.
Evan, it's called an AUMF, the Authorization of Use of Military Force. Why don't we just get Congress to authorize a couple $100 billion authorizing our people to cyber attack this country?
Well, we don't need an authorization to cyber attack, but we have to remember what
we need
North
something, don't we?
For a cyber attack, we do that through clandestine services, and we've done it to Iran and other regimes. But when you actually go out and perform this, remember, North Korea will retaliate, and they have. Remember a month and a half ago when they took over all the Western Europe computer systems and hospitals and held them for ransom? That was North Korea, according to Fox News. And we need to actually keep in mind that there will be retaliation, and what could that be?
Why don't we take them down, cyber?
The thing about cyber attacks, and you mentioned Iran and the efforts that we tried there to stall their nuclear enrichment program, they're just temporary solutions. They're just Band-Aids. They're going to slow down the process but not actually fix it. What you need in a place like North Korea is to try to open up the world to this population so that they aren't starving anymore, so that they have access to information about what's happening elsewhere, so that the regime isn't able to continue to clamp down.
That won't happen until the regime changes.
Yeah, I was going to say, is that kind of akin to what we're trying to do?
They don't get to pick what they think over there.
That hasn't worked. That
hasn't worked in Syria.
Hasn't worked anywhere, ever, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like blaming.
You got to figure it out, Alyona.
I'm not really going to solve world peace here, but
overseas. I mean, that's really that's that theory. I can't.
It's just again pointing to that sanctions backfire and they only make people look more inward.
I'm not looking for sanctions anymore. Sanctions seem to be a lot of nothing for me. A big nothing
burger.
Just a
feel-good moment. It doesn't even work.
We pay the really smart people around the world a lot of money to go attack the North Koreans. Maybe I'm crazy. Kat thinks I'm crazy.
I don't think you're crazy.
Up next, President Trump kicking off his second big foreign trip and preparing for a contentious G20 summit meeting with foreign leaders. The stakes could not be higher. Stay tuned.
President Trump touching down in Poland a short time ago and kicking off his second foreign trip abroad as president. Tomorrow, he's scheduled to deliver a major address from the square that was the center of the Warsaw Uprising during World War II. But it's Friday's G20 Economic Summit in Germany that's expected to have the big fireworks of his trip, including a scheduled meeting with Vladimir Putin. Alyona, you wrote a piece about this. I personally think that at least Trump can rest assured that no matter how he acts, most people are going to find a problem to have with it because they're really looking forward to being some sort of problem. How do you think that Trump should handle this meeting?
Well, basically what I wrote is that everyone is going to walk away disappointed from this meeting. No one's going to get anything if they want. And that's because, well, because of the current political dynamics, there's not all that much that either Donald Trump or Vladimir Putin can really do. So you're right. Trump, because of all of the heat that he's facing here at home with investigations into potential ties between his campaign and the Russian government, as well as election interference in 2016, he is under a lot of pressure to not act too nice to the Russians, right? To try to take on a tough stance and be in a tough position. But no matter what, people aren't going to be happy. But he also doesn't have a lot of concessions.
But Alyona, you warn against something that I think we really need to be paying attention to, and that is the dynamic between China and Russia. And if we make them both feel too alienated, maybe they form some type of relationship amongst themselves. Noting that their trade is up 30% between the two countries. What's your prediction there?
Yeah, I just feel like that, that is something that we're not keeping an eye on. And again, that's going back to this whole approach to Russia, where so much of our focus right now is on the dynamics between Trump and Putin. But
we have to be able to do more than one thing at one time,
yeah,
right?
but we're not doing it.
So
China and Russia share a huge border. Trade went up by 30%. A lot of Chinese tourism now is moving into Russia, and they're expected to spend about $2 billion just in tourism this coming year. And there's a new Silk Road in order to increase trade routes that China is planning. And I'm not trying to claim that relations between China and Russia are super rosy. There's a lot of distrust in that area too, but it's something that you have to keep an eye on in the meantime, because that's going to hurt America down the line, right?
And Eric, I really hate the fact that I feel like so much of the focus on this is going to be around stupid stuff like body language. Maybe they'll be timing how long the handshake is, and did he look at him this way, and I don't really care about stuff like that. I care about having relationships and having policies that are going to put this country in a good place.
And I think Trump is the same way. I think everyone's going to analyze what the body language is and who was the alpha male and who was the beta male. And it won't matter, because I think Trump acts the same way no matter what people are saying or accusing him of. Remember, everyone's going to say, well, is he going to go soft on Russia? Russia's going to ask if the sanctions can be lifted. Remember, President Obama put some final sanctions as he left office. Russia's going to ask for them to be lifted, and everyone's going to say, well, is this part of a deal to get him in office? He doesn't really care. The interesting part is he's going to Poland today and tomorrow. He's going to make his announcement. He has a very friendly ally in Poland. Then he's going to head over to the G20, where he's going to sit down and probably get a cold shoulder from Merkel in Germany because of his pulling out of the Paris Climate Accord. And then he's going to sit down with the two most important leaders in the world to him, which China's Xi and Russia's Putin. And the three of them need to hash out two issues: North Korea and Syria, and get her done, right? Because the world is becoming a much more dangerous place with what's going on in both.
Do you think that it would be a mistake for him to bring up, there's a lot of pressure for him to bring up the election hacking. A lot of people want to see Trump do that, President Trump.
I think he should start looking forward, to be honest with you. I think that we should stop Russia from ever doing something like that again in terms of hacking a major party candidate's servers. But we also should be forward-thinking, and we should look at how Russia can, as we were talking about in the previous segment, talk about North Korea and help aid in that situation. Maybe we make a deal where we drop some of the sanctions in exchange for their assistance.
But in order to look forward, you have to acknowledge the potential that something like election hacking actually happened, which the president hasn't done, and he's consistently just called it a hoax. So you can't just say move forward without first stepping back to that part.
No, you could.
I also think that we should.
Why would he have to address election hacking when he can say, as Evan points out, make a deal?
Well, you can't just
work on some of your Russian
this
sanctions
hypothetical may happen in 2018 based on something that is dominating the news cycle now.
What if we split the baby, though, and we don't necessarily acknowledge it in this setting? Because, frankly, I don't think that would do us very much good. But to your point on it, we pay attention to it. We get our people involved on it to put us in the position where it doesn't happen again, and then we move forward with the deal operation.
I guess, but I think 2016 is in Trump's rearview mirror, and there's absolutely nothing in it for him.
Right, but I'm just talking about the domestic political dynamics. He has an audience to please here, and so at least bringing it up then allows him to move forward and talk about issues like
But you know Trump's
energy,
base doesn't care
like
about
the
that,
Arctic,
Alyona.
like Ukraine, like Syria, like North Korea, like
One
China.
aspect we are missing, which is China. China has been aggressively expanding the New Silk Road, their expansion into Africa, the Caribbean, and Central America, threatening the economy by taking over our traditional areas.
Yeah, very tough. We're all going to have an easier Friday probably than President Trump. A lot of tough stuff to handle. All right, when we come back, more than 40 states now saying they won't fully cooperate with President Trump's voter fraud panel. Can it still get answers in its investigation? And later, CNN does it again, this time accused of blackmailing the person behind the Trump CNN wrestling video. Don't go away.
44 states are now saying they either will partially or fully rebuff information requests from President Trump's voter fraud panel. Now, many of them claim the commission is asking for confidential voter data that shouldn't be made public. However, in his statement this afternoon, Chris Kollege, who's the vice chair of the panel, disputed the existence of states' resistance. But is this setting up a major potential legal showdown between states and federal officials over the integrity of our elections? Eric, I want to start with you. The last segment you made, I think, a very rational and understandable point that for President Trump, the 2016 election is in the rearview mirror. He's looking forward. If that's the case, then why are we looking backwards on this voter fraud thing?
The vast majority today trying to figure out why in the world they're making this push. And I can only think that they're looking forward to 2018, but certainly 2020 for a re-election. Now, remember, this could all be solved if we push through a voter ID law nationally.
Well, we all can already anticipate
which will not happen. It's just not going to happen. Right. But in the absence of that, all they're requesting is publicly available information.
But Social Security numbers and things like that too?
Well, okay, you want to guarantee the integrity of the voting process, right? I mean,
sure.
But again, as you aptly point out, why now? Why this? When there are so many things going on, I'm not sure.
Kat, I'll go to you too. Now we all know the statistic: 1.8 dead voters on these rolls. But even if that's the case, let's say that we all concede that point. Does that justify what some people feel is a very, very intrusive thing, asking for Social Security numbers and things of this nature?
Right. Well, cybersecurity experts are saying that this is basically a hacker's dream come true.
And they want it on a portal. They want it on an internet portal.
Yeah, and one of the options in this request is saying that you can send it over in secure email. Come on, states have a very legitimate reason to not want to comply with this, especially because voter fraud, I mean, there hasn't been a study yet that's found it being some huge, massive election swinging problem. I'm smiling
because, Evan, you know where I'm going with this, right? Okay, so there's that argument that says that the voter fraud is a myth, right? That's not a real thing.
It does happen sometimes before I get attacked for that.
Right.
Of course it happens. That's not what I said. I didn't say it was a myth.
I actually wasn't saying that you said that, Kat. I was saying that some people feel that that's completely a myth. And then also, some people say it's a very real thing, and therefore we should go through every effort to make sure that we protect against it.
Well, first, we should establish that some of these states legally can't even disclose some of the information that Chris Kollege and the commission are requesting.
Yes.
But I think this is all about protecting the integrity of our election process. And if you want to talk about voter fraud and disenfranchisement, in New York City between November 2015 and April 2016, 126,000 residents in Brooklyn were inadvertently purged from the voter rolls due to clerical error. Additionally, in 2013, New York City's Department of Investigation sent 63 undercover people to vote without having any ID or just pretending to be other people. 60 of them voted successfully, and of the 3 that voted or were caught, one of them was caught because he actually knew one of the poll workers. It turned out to be like his brother-in-law.
But this runs the risk of creating new problems, of hacking. I want to just make sure when investigating something that has only been shown so far to be a minor problem, to not create huge new problems.
Yeah, I mean, there is no proof out there of widespread voter fraud. It's never been offered. But also,
nor is there proof of Russian tampering having an effect on the election process as well, but that doesn't stop the left from
if you want to go back to the last segment,
the same type of thing that honestly the Trump administration is asking for.
Well, what the Trump administration is asking for, if we're trying to find out their motivation here and why they aren't just leaving 2016 behind them, is because the hope is that if you make people question the voting system, the integrity of the voting system here in the United States, then there will be more support for voter ID laws, for restricting early voting or same-day registration. And these are all problems that end up in voter purging. That makes it harder for Americans in this country to actually exercise
I don't see
their
how
civic
it's
duty to vote.
disenfranchisement to say you need an ID to vote. I can walk into a polling place on any election day in New York City and say, "Hi, I'm John Smith." And they'll say,
Right.
"Okay, here you go. Go ahead and vote."
Well, a lot of people don't actually have IDs. They don't have their birth certificates. They don't have the proper documentation
In New York City, one of the more
order to
progressive
get
cities in this
that ID.
country, they offer you free IDs, and they will give you an ID to get an
Sure,
ID
New
as
York
well.
City is not necessarily
It's
the
not
problem, right? I mean, we're
reflective of
talking
every
about
place in the
people who
country.
often are lower income, often are minorities, often are the elderly, that end up not being able to then access.
Do you see that all they're asking for, this commission, is publicly available information? They're not asking any
But
state
they're
to break
not.
the
So
law.
that's why
Eric,
44
Eric,
states are saying no to them, is because some of the information,
Yeah.
like
Are you-
Social Security
are you gonna
numbers,
give up
is
your
not
social
publicly
number, Eric? 'Cause I
available
know-
information.
they're
I'm not going to
State.
read my social security number on the air right now.
This is right from a letter that they sent to the state of Iowa. In accordance with each state's laws in an effort to increase the integrity, and they're specifically, I'm requesting that you provide to the commission the publicly available voter roll data for your
It gets into a
state.
question of whether or not you violate the Privacy Act of the 1970s, because it says you can't publish, as the federal government, any sort of personal data.
Okay, well, straight ahead, we'll continue on this. But CNN, embroiled in a new controversy, now being accused of blackmailing the man behind the infamous Trump CNN wrestling video. We'll be right back with it. Stay with us.
You just want attention. You don't want my heart. Maybe you just hate the thought of me with someone new. Yeah, you just.
Welcome back to the Fox News specialists. Our specialists today are Alyona Minkovski and Evan Siegfried, and we will continue the conversation right now. CNN facing a new firestorm, now being accused of blackmail. The network's investigative team actually tracked down the person who made that Trump CNN wrestling video the other day, and it blew up this week. Some on the network are trying to pass this off as innocence. Watch.
The investigative team went back and found the guy who first created this. He took credit for it. And then here comes the remarkable part. He apologized. He apologized for having done this. This is a very full-throated, I think, genuine, honest apology. He has also asked that we not reveal his name or whereabouts, and we at CNN are honoring that.
But in CNN's online report about the story, things have a far more ominous tone. It says, quote, CNN is now publishing the person's name because he is a private citizen who has issued an extensive statement of apology, showed his remorse by saying he has taken down all his offending posts, and because he said he's not going to repeat this ugly behavior on social media again. And here's the interesting part. CNN reserves the right to publish his identity should any of that change. Tony Soprano would be proud. Now, that's called doxing. It's a practice of identifying and publishing users' private information, and it's heavily frowned upon. Andrew Kaczynski, the CNN investigative unit editor who levied the dox threat, in my opinion, should at least be reprimanded, if not more. By the way, that guy has been an internet bully for years. Cat, doxing, one of the more dangerous activities. Kaczynski threatened to out this guy who put together the video.
Okay, well, this guy also, by all accounts, he's posted lots of racist, anti-Semitic, awful garbage on the internet. What I don't get, though, is, so we're not gonna expose you for now, but we might. Does that mean that you're gonna be, like, following this guy, using your resources to follow this guy, just make sure he lives the whole rest of his life with the CNN cloud over his head of maybe I'll get in trouble?
So it's,
come on, that's petty and weird.
So it's the conditional nature of what you're talking about, Kat, that makes this not just kind of unsettling, but I'm sure as we'll get to, Eric, possibly getting into some legal terrain. Let's do it. Let's do it.
Take a listen to Ted Cruz. He had some opinions. Oh, full screen. All right, well, let me see the full screen. Anyway, here it is. Troubling. This is Ted Cruz Twitter. Troubling. I assume CNN's lawyers are examining
Georgia statutes.
Georgia 16-8-16, theft by extortion if CNN constructively obtained the gift maker's IP, Internet Protocol address. It's a Georgia crime, and if they threaten to disseminate any information tending to subject any person to hatred, contempt, or ridicule.
Yeah, Attorney Cruz on the case.
Could this Andrew Kaczynski or CNN be on the hook?
Yeah, I mean, legally speaking, Eric, they could, because if you look at the letter of the law and look at that statute closely, the facts could correlate. Now, do I think they're going to go there? Likely not. But I do think they put themselves in a very dangerous position with this type of conditional treatment and basically, to me, threatening, if you don't want to say blackmailing, it's at least threatening this guy's exposure.
And Alyona, my feeling is that CNN took the right tact. You saw the on-air host talking about, hey, CNN's not going to publish the guy, even though they found it. Yet online, this Kaczynski guy just really took it right to the maker of that gift.
I think they made a bad call. And Kaczynski does, by the way, defend himself, say that that line has been misinterpreted, that really all they were trying to say is that they didn't come up with a deal to tell this online user that they were going to conceal his identity, but then say it that way.
Yeah.
Right? It definitely came across as threatening.
The problem is, Evan, is that originally they said that the kid apologized first. It turns out, I believe I'm not mistaken on this, that he apparently he's a young kid. He apologized after being
He's a
threatened
middle-aged
by
man.
Not young enough.
Not
young enough.
He's a middle-aged, racist, meme-making man, but still, they're acting inappropriately.
I'm going to partially
Absolutely
defend,
CNN acting inappropriately.
I'm going to partially defend Andrew Kaczynski, and I'm going to go after the editors, because apparently it was an editor who inserted the infamous line, which triggered the whole, did they just blackmail and say or threaten this guy? And why didn't the legal team at CNN, who reviews these types of articles, say,
blame the lawyers, Evan? Really, Evan? Blame the lawyers?
How many people cry for a lawyer?
I know. I'm just kidding.
Those lawyers are probably getting paid a lot, you know.
A whole lot.
But one other point about CNN. When Trump posted the video in the first place, it's not a GIF. Please, GIFs are short. Yeah. But when Trump posted that, we had members of the CNN press team saying, wait a second, this is violating Twitter's terms of service because it's inciting violence against reporters. No, it was a juvenile, clownish video, and that's it. It wasn't a violation of Twitter's terms of service, and they set their own hair on fire and looked ridiculous in the process.
Yeah, I just don't understand the way that they took the worst of both ways of doing it to try to make it just be like, yeah, well, CNN's watching you, just so you know, to see if you do anything weird in your Reddit sub-threads. I mean, come on, that's so petty and strange.
Well, I think it does show, though, something that we deal with online anonymity. And I think we've all probably been the victims of people saying really nasty things to us on the internet. I know that I have. And on one hand, it's kind of too bad, right, that people get to hide behind it. But also, people make mistakes.
But saying it alone, saying things is one thing, and then outing someone's IP address.
I'm not agreeing with outing them.
It just blows my mind how.
I'm just saying that can be a very dangerous path, because then the rest of the internet horde is unleashed, and then people get death threats, and they have people showing up at their homes, and that's why privacy actually is important.
And I think the danger in it, Eric, too, is the fact that, again, it's conditional. If he hadn't apologized, then what? It all hangs out there to dry? I think that's the part that I have a problem with.
If this changes, again, do they have a unit on him watching?
They got a car sitting outside of his house right now.
Watching his meme activity, because they probably could find something better to do with their time.
All right, we're going to leave right there. Coming up, it's Cat on the Street after 4th of July's festivities. What uncelebrated special day do Americans really want to recognize? Stay with us.
The only one who could ever reach me was the son of a preacher man. The only boy who could ever teach me was the son of a preacher man. Yes, he was. He was. Yes, he was.
It's time for Cat on the Street. Yesterday, of course, was the July 4th holiday, and no one loves it more than I do. But I got curious. I wondered if there was another special day that regular people would also like to celebrate. So I took my list to the street and tried to find out. Big national holiday. What of the ones on this list do you think is maybe the second most important thing in our country?
I think the birth of Abraham Lincoln, because he did a lot from this country.
Even more so than the invention of text messaging? But you just said the moon landing was fake news.
That's right.
So, would you like it more if maybe we had a moon landing day?
No.
I'm a science guy, so I would pick the moon landing.
So people in Sweden think that people in America actually did that? What of these seems like it could be a maybe second most important day for our country?
Anniversary of the first text message, for sure.
I agree, because as an American, it's been the most monumental thing to happen in my life.
Boston Tea Party is too close to Christmas. That's the problem.
Okay.
Like the holiday season, everyone's swamped, so.
Why not just get the whole month off?
Boston Tea Party, definitely.
More so than, you know, Ross saying Rachel's name at the altar.
It's a pretty big one, actually.
I think when Ross says Rachel's name at the altar, that was a defining moment in the humanity.
How do you agree?
That was a very redefining moment in humanity, so I think that should be a national holiday.
I agree! Thank you! Ross saying Rachel's name at the altar.
Yeah. Who's Rosh and Rachel? Who's Rosh? I don't even know who that is.
They're an American love story for the ages.
I like the birth of Eric Bolling.
Oh, yeah? What about the birth of Eric Bolling?
The Boston Tea Party?
More important than the birth of Eric Bolling? Don't say.
Say.
He really wants to drain the swamp.
Oh, great. I don't know who that is.
But you like it?
Yeah, I'm into it.
Yeah, me too, me too.
All right, cool.
So day off for that?
Yeah, no work on that day.
No work on Eric Bolling's birthday?
No, yeah.
I'd say women's suffrage.
Women's suffrage, yeah, that's pretty important.
Women's suffrage, for sure.
Okay. Even more important than the birth of Eric Bolling?
Yes.
Savage. For me, it's like a tie between women's suffrage and the season premiere of Elf.
What is that?
He's a lovable furry alien named Gordon Shumway from the planet Melmac. Duh.
Dang, that was 1986. That was before me. I wasn't even born then.
I wasn't either, but I developed interest in it later, which is, I think, significantly weirder. I feel like that's the clear answer.
Well, women's suffrage, of course.
Yeah, women's suffrage and Elf.
I like voting and I like Elf.
I don't watch television. I'm sorry.
Well, you should start with Elf.
I'm okay.
All right. And while we're talking holidays, former San Francisco 49ers quarterback Kaepernick, who sparked an uproar at NFL games last year for kneeling during the national anthem, used July 4th to take a new shot at the USA. Kaepernick tweeting, quote, "How can we truly celebrate independence on a day that intentionally robbed our ancestors of theirs? To find my independence, I went home." Kaepernick is touring the African nation of Ghana to trace his ancestral roots and find his, quote, personal independence. Well, he did celebrate Independence Day by having the freedom to voice that opinion, which is one way he celebrated it. I mean, I don't know. Eboni, I know you've defended him.
Coming to the black woman.
Yeah, you've defended him. I've been on with you multiple times while you've defended him. So
of course.
What do you think about that?
You know what, Kat? I'm obviously just teasing you, right? I'm happy to speak out about this because I have defended his right, not necessarily the way he did it, wouldn't have been my choice, but his right to protest this country. And I will say this James Baldwin quote to capture my feeling on this. "I love America more than any other country in the world. And exactly for this reason, I reserve the right to perpetually criticize her." So when we talk about being a more perfect union, if we really embrace the spirit of that, I think that this is completely appropriate.
Well, he does. Of course, we all have that right. And that's one of the most wonderful things about this country. What do you think, Eric?
The system worked. So Colin Kaepernick had the right to be a jerk and kneel for the national anthem when the flag is flying. And so many Americans had died for that flag. He had a right to do that. But the system also worked. Guess what happened right after that season? He got let go because people were sick of it and they didn't like it and they weren't showing up to the San Francisco 49ers games.
I would push back that was
terrible year behind center.
I would push back on that and say that's not the only reason he is not playing football in the NFL.
Well, he's a talented guy.
No, not that. I mean, I'm not saying he's not talented, but he's not the most mobile quarterback I've ever seen.
But we aren't always really tolerant of free speech, is what you're trying to say, too. No, I completely agree that he has the right to say whatever he wants.
Yeah, but that's the way it should happen. He shouldn't be fined or jailed for what he did, but we should certainly have the right to not buy his product.
Yeah. I mean, I became a citizen about 9 years ago. I just found the picture yesterday where I had a headband with 2 American flags on it when I went to my naturalization ceremony. And that's what I love about this country is that I can say whatever I want and criticize her.
He has the right to be stupid, and we have the right to criticize him for it.
It brings up legitimate points about the country.
I think that when you go out and compare, the rights you have in America and all of the many freedoms that everybody who lives here have actually had.
Wait, what's the comparison you're talking about?
When you compare it to other nations, pardon me, where some women aren't even allowed to vote, drive cars. But
when did Colin Kaepernick do that?
I'm not saying he did, but if we as an audience compared and actually talked about that, and if he were to go and look at what other countries deny,
and that's not what he's saying, right? That's not what he's saying.
And he also says that the
not every nation had slavery be the backbone
minorities.
of their economy for a long time.
Didn't he say that we don't have equal rights under that flag?
He was talking about as black Americans. He didn't feel that black Americans enjoyed the equal protections of our country as our counterparts. Which he's not alone in that.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Lots of issues there. All right, when we return, we circle back with our specialists, Alyona Minkovski and Evan Siegfried.
Time to circle back with our specialists. Our specialists today are Alyona Minkovski, and Evan Siegfried. So, Alyona, you will be in Russia next week, and we were talking in the break. Share with me some of the things you want to ask the young people or just people in general over in Moscow.
Yeah, I just think it's important to contextualize what's happening in both countries. And even current politics aside, Putin and Donald Trump aside, these are two nations that are both global leaders in their own right, that are rich in human resources. And I think that we should do whatever we can to avoid, military conflict and try to find ways to get people in both countries to understand each other. I feel like there are a lot more similarities than we actually let on to. So I'm looking forward to just speaking to people face to face to see what their priorities are, what their concerns are.
I can't wait to hear what you find.
Evan, what do you think we can expect from tomorrow and Friday?
I think we can see that President Trump is laying the groundwork for a lot of these relationships he's going to need for the future. Tomorrow, he's going to get a very warm reception from the Polish people. I hear that every member of the majority party is getting 50 tickets to bring friends from anywhere in the country. And I think it's going to be very different to see New Europe in Poland versus old Europe in Germany and France.
If I can just take a second to thank both of the specialists very quickly, but I just got a note. I just got a text right now. We just made the Swamp, thanks to you, just made the New York Times bestseller list, the first window available. #3 on the combined, #4 on the hardcover. Thank you all very much, and thank you.
Congratulations,
for
Eric. That is awesome.
Appreciate it.
Seriously,
very,
so
very,
proud
very
of you.
much.
Super
Very cool.
proud of you.
Thank you.
That's awesome. Well, I want to thank you all and thank our Fox News specialists today, Alyona Minkovski and Evan Siegfried. Thank you all at home for watching. Make sure you follow us on all of our social media @Specialists on FNC and Twitter. And our Facebook page is coming a very long way, so check that out. And make sure you remember, 5 o'clock will never be the same. Special Report is up next.
Stern warnings from the U.S. at the United Nations Security Council and defiance from North Korea over nukes and missiles that one day could target America. This is Special Report.